That was the most perfect closing that I could ever imagine, and I'm not going to try to close on top of that. Just to share two thoughts with you. Of course, without question, as I've told you this morning, this is the fourth conference that we've had, and by a great margin, overwhelmingly, exponentially more powerful, more inspiring, more ideas, more commitment, and a commonality of voice that was extraordinary. Just to share it short, I had the opportunity today to visit with a person I consider my real mentor, Judge Jack Weinstein, who unfortunately is not doing that well. And he was at the doctor this morning, and the doctor almost did not let him go back to court. He said he doesn't know how long more he'll be in the court, as the illness that he has is coming up on him very strong, unfortunately. When I told him about this conference, and he remembered about his lone voice in 1981, a lone voice in a forest of people that were not listening and did not pay attention, and he literally had some tears in his eyes as I was explaining to him what happened here in the last day and a half when I visited him this afternoon. So I want you to know that it was an impact that will have far wide-reaching influence, recognizing the quality of the conversation, the quality of the people that delivered that conversation, and the commitment and the devotion that each person here represents. One thought process, just to add to the repertoire of the extraordinary amount of information that you already have. The latest studies in neuroscience tells us that the single most significant factor in the human development, though we cannot change our genetics, but we can control our genetics. It's called the epigene. I'm sure some of you have known about it. You can check it, Google it, you'll find out about it. They've done control studies with it and so forth. The epigene, how does it, we don't know, we haven't measured it. We know it exists because of what takes place around it, like the God particle, like the Higgs boson, like those factors that today we know they exist, but we do not have the instrumentation to be able to identify them. But they do know one thing, based on the control study that they did on multiple generations of hunger in Denmark, and they concluded that the single most significant factor in the human experience is not what you think, it's not what you feel, it's what you do. Behavior is the key factor. And in fact, most of us who consider addiction, we have now addiction, drug addictions, alcohol addiction, food addiction, sex addictions, but behaviors are also addictions. We just call them habits, just a different name. And so people get addicted to certain behavioral patterns. And those addictions are as powerful as any other addiction. It's just that we have not identified them that way. And they need to be addressed in a manner. The only way that you can change that is by behavioral modification, which will take a completely different look. And I was discussing with some of the judges who made presentations today that it's about time for the people to put some influence on the Bureau of Prisons, because we're not going to change that reality too fast. We're still going to have 1 million plus people sitting in prisons and more than 2 million waiting to sit in prison, unfortunately. And before the change happens, we turn that ship around, at probably an inch at a time, and it takes a long time to change that ship, even though there is a momentum. That we need to start to put pressure on the Bureau of Prisons and on the government to make sure that people are able to come in without difficulty, to counsel people, to teach them, to give them some kind of psychological benefits, which now is completely not existent. I know today we have a little bit more access, but for 25 years, it took me 6 hours to get into a prison and 4 weeks until I got permission with the NCIC, and it wasn't on priority lists. We need to put that pressure on. That's first thing. And then I just want to share a short story with you. I hail from Ontario. And Northern Ontario is the biggest growing area for what you call evergreens, used as Christmas trees. And they have these massive lumber companies, tree-growing companies, that have these transit camps that move from one area to another, and they stay there for 3, 4, 5 years. They cut the trees, they replant the trees, and then they move to another area. They do like 10 square, 15 square miles at a time. And so these camps, they move around, and they have a schoolhouse with them. They have a portable hospital with them. They have everything. They move around with maybe 500 or 600 people. And at night, it gets really cold in Northern Ontario, around the Yukon territories, around the basin. And one day, the little boy, it was wintertime, and he didn't come home. And the parents, they go to the neighbors. Did you see little Joey? Well, he was in school, but he didn't get home yet. And they start running back and forth, trying to find out where he is, nowhere to be found. They start searching, screaming, walking around the camp, nowhere to be found. You know, in that kind of bellicose environment, for frost, it doesn't take long for a little boy to freeze. And at night, this is an area where they have wolves and bears, etc. So they get a little alarmed. What are we going to do? And they set out in little groups, trying to call out, where is he? But they realize that there's a lot of little Christmas trees around there, a lot of little evergreens. And so he could be a little boy. He could be hiding behind one of them or whatever. And after a few hours, when they realize that they cannot find him, one person comes up with an idea, says, let me tell you something. He couldn't have gone very far. He's a little boy, deep snow. He says, we've got 400 people in this group. Let's just join hands. We'll make one big line, and we'll go one direction, then we'll go to another direction, and possibly we'll bump into him. And he's maybe laying under some snow. And they start doing that, and they grab a hold of each other's hands, and they start walking down the rows. And finally, after the third try, a person looks down, and he feels a little something at his foot, and he sees this little boy, and he picks him up. But it's too late. He's already been frozen to death. And they say to themselves, if we only joined hands an hour earlier, we may have saved that little boy. So it's not about one person doing one thing, or one organization doing one thing, or one group. It's about joining hands and doing it together. And when we do together, we can save not only one life. If you save one life, you save a whole world. Imagine if you save a world of lives. You save not a universe, but a multiverse. Thank you very much. God bless you.